Scott, you're the CEO of the Phoenix, a program that has helped so many people that are struggling with addiction and really just figure out ways to find happiness and to find fulfillment and to get out of that. And you've built a community, and I think the community has been really essential for people to find other voices that have had similar struggles and to connect with them and to get out of these dark places. And you had a personal experience that led to this organization, this important organization coming to life. And I'm excited to have you here and talk about what you've been building and what you want to do next.
Oh, well, thanks for having me. Yeah, great to be here and to chat with you. And I love your show.
Thanks, Scott. So Scott, like just kind of going back to your beginnings and origins, how did you get interested in this space? And can you just talk a little bit about like your personal journey and what made you want to eventually launch the Phoenix from that?
Yeah, so my own journey started when I was really young. I had a father with untreated mental health struggles, and I'm in a Phoenix gym, so if you hear weights dropping in the background, that's what it is. But had a father with untreated mental illness and a stepfather with untreated alcoholism, and the result of that for me was a lot of self-esteem wounds as a kid growing up in that really dynamic environment. And then as I got older and found drugs and alcohol, I just started pouring it on that pain, trying to make it go away, uh, until ultimately I was able to stop.
But how did you get to the point of stopping?
Yeah, for me, it was, addiction's one of those things that, it's hard to sort of discern between that like party lifestyle and what's normal at an age when you're experimenting with drugs or alcohol, and when it's become something much darker. And I think for me, it started to sort of strip away the dreams of who I thought I could be. And, you have these dark nights that sort of, you wake up the next day and you're having to apologize and make amends to people and try to figure out what kind of damage you did, the night before. And it gets exhausting, and you eventually start to get sick and tired of that and want to make a change.
But I mean, some people, it's very difficult, Scott, for them to make that change. Like, how did you do it though?
Yeah, I mean, I just found myself in this, like, I called it like a seeking mode, where you would just sort of like, yeah, I was out there trying to look for something different to do. I didn't know how to stop what I was doing, but I knew I had to do something different. So I found my way into an outdoor store, and I had this chance to go on a camping trip when I was a kid, and I spent a lot of time outdoors with my dad. And I thought, why don't I get back into being outdoors and being in nature? So I went in this outdoor store and I said, I want to get outdoorsy. What do I need? And he said, you need a Gore-Tex jacket, So I got a Gore-Tex jacket, and I was walking out of the store planning a hiking trip, and I saw this brochure for climbing, and it was the craziest thing I'd ever seen. So I signed up for this climbing course, and it was actually ice climbing. And I got to the top of the climb, and I started to see something in myself through that accomplishment that I couldn't see in my everyday life. And that was the sort of the ember of what later became my recovery and ultimately the Phoenix.
Yeah. So it was about pushing yourself and challenging yourself that led to the beginning of recovery, to seeing how far you could go, basically, and understanding you had strength inside of you.
Yeah, it was. And I mean, just, for anybody who's listening who's, question their own relationship with substances, it's important to know that, like, I wasn't like a climber out of the gate, right? And I wasn't like doing CrossFit workouts and going to yoga and riding bikes and doing Ironman, all stuff I later got into. But, um, you know, I, I just started trying to run, and I ran like 300 yards, and I had to walk home because I was still smoking like a pack of cigarettes a day, and then I got in the boxing gym, and I was not gifted at that sport, which is, people let you know pretty quickly, as your opponent, sort of punishes you. But what I found in that gym was community and camaraderie, and people got the guys I trained with became my first like recovery fellowship. And every time I got to the top of a climb or ran 400 yards or ran my first mile, I started to think, if I can do this, I can push through the hard times in my own sobriety.
I mean, was your mother impactful at all in this journey? I mean, it seemed like your parents were very different, Your mom's an incredible, very high achieving person. I'm not saying your dad isn't in a sense, but I mean, she accomplished stuff that very few people have ever accomplished.
Yeah, I mean, I think, that's the contrast was really clear even as a kid, right? My dad had untreated mental illness, I later spent the back half of his life homeless, and we ultimately got him some care at the end of his life. And my mom became friends with three different presidents and ran a huge company and was this entrepreneur and business leader in a time where there weren't many women in business. And I think it was the love and connection I had with her and my siblings that kind of was the thread that kept me from drifting off into my addiction, never to return. Knowing that you had that love and attachment as a kid, at least from one place, made a big difference when I was in my darkest moments. And then as I got into recovery and started thinking about how I could give back to the world, and found this deep gratitude for life, my mom became a really great thought partner in that, just given her entrepreneurial background, and that ultimately led to the Phoenix, the nonprofit I started.
So you have this concept of no cost to join or participate, as long as you're sober for 48 hours. How did that concept happen? It seems to be incredibly successful, Scott, as a concept.
Yeah. So when the Phoenix started, I had these like sort of mentors and friends that taught me about climbing and taught me about triathlon, and the guys you go on a bike ride with, and they teach you how to shift your gears when you're climbing a hill on your bike or whatever it was. And I thought, friendship and connection shouldn't cost anything. I don't think you should have to sort of, charge for it. But and that's what I want it to be. I want it to be pretty informal. We just connect and we support each other in our recovery journeys, and that's really where the Phoenix was born. We had the 48 hours of sobriety, which was required. And sorry, my light's freaking out in the background. I'm going to have to turn it off, I think, or it's going to flash
No
the whole
worries.
time. You need to have 48 hours sober. So that sort of, make sure that you're sober enough to be present and to be in that community and support people. But other than that, there's no cost for membership, and the beauty of that is you can dip your toe in. You're still kind of living this old life, active in your addiction, and but you're staying sober Friday night, hanging out with people that support you and believe in you. And then Saturday you reflect and there was no drama and you were part of this great thing. Maybe you could come Saturday night. Now you've strung together 3 or 4 days in recovery. And that's how I got sober. I stayed sober on a weekend to go climbing. And then I realized if I stayed sober during the week, I could actually train and get better at climbing. And that's what we do at the Phoenix. And it's grown from the first year we had 60 people come to just a few weeks ago, we served 1 million people all time with Phoenix
Wow.
free recovery support.
Wow. So, how does the Phoenix work in general? Besides this first period of time, it seems like fitness, Scott, is a huge piece of this. Can you just explain the process?
Yeah, so the essentially you show up at an activity. Phoenix events are led by volunteers across the country. These are people who they themselves are in recovery or they love someone who struggled with addiction. And or they're just civically minded and they want to be the change they want to see in their community. And they share something they're passionate about. It could be a bike ride, a hike, a run. It could be a social event. It could be just meeting at a coffee shop and drinking some great espresso. And but you just 48 hours sober, you show up. There is an ethos that basically says we're here to lift each other up, not pull each other down. And with that simple framing, you start to find a new group of friends. And I always say that at Phoenix, you're believed in even if you don't yet believe in yourself. And it's through that belief in yourself that you start to heal that underlying why that is the driver of so many people's substance use.
So, you had quite a journey. I think from what I've read, started drinking when you were 11, And now, I mean, you obviously haven't been doing that for some time. I mean, are some of these people that are coming into the Phoenix, are they even worse situations than what you were in? I mean, are you kind of have you become this? I mean, essentially, I think Scott, you become this mentor to them, but it seems like some of them could even be way worse than the experience you've had.
Yeah, I mean, I always think of like what gets you to the front door of Phoenix, in a community, because we're now all across the country. It's a pretty hard road for a lot of people, I just when I wrote my book, Rise, Recover, Thrive, about my own journey,
Mm,
I did it in part because my story has some extreme parts, but not that extreme, and I wanted to sort of shift this way we think of addiction. When you think of somebody in active addiction, you think of somebody in the Tenderloin in San Francisco, or these open drug markets and in our communities, and somebody's on the corner with this brown bag with a bottle of booze in it. And but it affects us all,
yeah,
right? I think we all seek our emotional well-being externally often because it feels like the easiest place to find it, but you got to look inside to really find it, right? So, and but how extreme those journeys are can be very different. And when you start to understand what brought people to substance use as a coping mechanism, whether it's untreated mental health struggles or trauma histories and really difficult experiences in life, you find this different like sympathy and empathy and love for people on that journey. And it's through feeling that love and empathy that people can start to be vulnerable and open up and ask for help. So yeah, we do come from widely different backgrounds
mhm,
to find our way to our, a Phoenix t-shirt or sober t-shirt. But um, once we get here, we're here to lift each other up. So we become even stronger than we ever could have been.
that's great. That's great. It's the community aspect I think is so powerful here, and what you've done. When you think about just like the aspects of staying sober and how that can be done right. Like, what are your thoughts on just the culture today of alcohol and of, you mentioned earlier that fine line between partying and addiction. Like, how do you kind of, because some people, this is their way of life. You're trying to get them to completely switch their way of life. Do you find they can have that balance between some alcohol and then still kind of within a normal range and being able to function? Like, what have you seen and how do you kind of convey that to them?
Yeah, I mean, I think we're in a time where what this means, recovery or sobriety or choose, sober curious or not drinking or whatever it is going to be a new definition, I think, than how we probably thought of it even 10 years ago. Cause we really know now there's alcohol is just not good for you really at all. There aren't really any amounts of it that are great for you. And you could probably say that for a lot of recreational drugs, but, it's like, I'm not trying to get the world sober. I'm just trying to get people to think about like, does it affect them or people they love negatively? And it could be a big thing where you're sort of just blowing up your life because you're totally out of control with your use or your drinking. But it also could be you're trying to optimize yourself and how you're running your business. Maybe you're an entrepreneur and really so what's the point of having, a six pack of beer, the night before and then being off to a slow start the next day when you're trying to optimize everything else in your business? Why not optimize yourself too? So there's something there that I think you just need to look at, and it's a really individual decision if it's holding you back or impacting the people you love and care about or you in a negative way, then you got to look at your relationship with it. And I would just tell folks like don't worry about what's next because what you'll find, say coming to the Phoenix, or finding folks on our mobile platform called New Form, it's like a new form of digital community, is you just start to dream of what's possible in your life and you don't have that thing slowing you down anymore. For me, it probably would have ultimately taken my life. For others, it might just keep them from ever being like performing optimally. So, it's just your own relationship, but I think you're going to find a new community if you make that decision that supports you, and the people that support you in that will support you in your other dreams in life. And it's amazing what's happened since I made that choice.
Have you found the book has been a really important piece of what you built with the Phoenix?
I have, because I don't think a lot of us talk about the underlying why behind addiction. I think we often are trying to treat and manage the symptoms of it in people that we love and care about, but rarely do we step back as a family and say, hey, let's just look at our family dynamic. Is it healthy? Or is there this one, really destructive energy in the family that no one really talks about, we shy away from? So we sort of, in some ways, just allow it to continue. Or do we really do our own work? When I have a loved one reach out and say, hey, my son, my daughter, my partner, whoever is struggling, I encourage them to do their own work, to start doing their own therapy and doing their own self-reflection on how they can build and improve their quality of life. Because even just modeling that can shake up sort of these dynamics in a family of origin or a group of friends. And so, yeah, it's really something we all need to look at. Not that we all need to stop drinking, but I think we could try to live our best life, I think, is important. Because when we're living our best life and we find our own gifts and then a way to share them with others, that is actually where a life of purpose comes from. And I know you're an entrepreneur, I'm sure, in your new business, like working with folks on those ideas and ideating and honing it and making it better. You wake up with a different sort of excitement for the
Best.
day when you're in that place.
Yeah, it's so rewarding. I think like you've touched on a lot of interesting points, Scott, around finding purpose, and challenging yourself. I think from what I've seen from the Phoenix, that's the biggest thing that people get out of it, is they find something to do with themselves that's meaningful to them. And I think that that's you're like replacing something with something else essentially. It's like a switch.
Yeah. And the difference is that in the thing you're finding, it has this enduring um ability to support and nurture you. Like, you may fall in love with climbing, but the real magic is the people you go climbing with, and they become your friends, and when you're having a tough day, they're there for you. You may fall in love with lifting weights in the gym, but it's the people you're in the gym with that's the real magic. So we often say you come for the workout, but you're staying for the friendships.
So Scott, what do you want to do at this point? Like what's your biggest focus now?
Yeah, I mean, so we I think of Phoenix a bit more as the way you would like a startup business, even
Sure.
though we're about 20 years in. Um, we're always trying to drive creative destruction, this idea of let's build something so much better tomorrow that what we have today becomes obsolete. And we try to have this day one mentality. So we're like kind of gritty and trying to think about how to bootstrap and innovate, even when we're maybe viewed as a fairly mature nonprofit. Um, but I think that's something that's very different in the nonprofit space. I think in most philanthropists are sort of betting on a very focused, like, snapshot around an issue area. It could be homelessness or reentry from incarceration, or an open drug market in a community they're trying to solve for. But I'd love to see philanthropists try to drive that creative destruction, that innovation, like the same way they bet on companies in their day job. I'd love to see them bet on that through their philanthropy. And I share that because we built a mobile platform to connect people to Phoenix. We realized that you could add other nonprofits to it. Then we rebranded that as New Form, this new form of digital community. But our vision now is to have thousands of organizations and create a marketplace of healing where you can find what you need when you need it. Phoenix is one of the biggest sort of resources on New Form, but Phoenix will grow through volunteers across the country. New Form will grow as more organizations come onto this platform. but what's next from that platform? When we start to we have 750,000 downloads now. What happens when it's 2 or 3 million? What happens when we have, 1 million monthly active users? It'll transform how we think of digital community, So I think we're always trying to innovate in how we approach this issue, because we don't want to just help in a few communities across the country, which is honorable work. But we want to change the way our country approaches addiction, mental health, social isolation. That's the real way we'll keep people from sort of falling into this river of despair that is addiction and untreated mental health.
Well, Scott, that was all the questions that I had. I appreciate you taking the time and doing this. I think it's amazing what you've created. I mean, and you mentioned 1 million people now have been affected by this. I mean, that's quite a massive number. I mean, of people that have went through this journey, and it's a decision you made in your life. That it could have been entirely different for you. This could have been something that you didn't overcome, but you did overcome it, and now you've chosen to help others with it. And I think people should definitely check out your book, and you did a really great TED talk as well that they should take a look at too. And I'm just excited to see who else you're going to help next, and how you're going to continue to change the world and make a positive difference. So thanks for coming on.
Yeah, thanks for having me on. And yeah, we served 1 million. Our next goal is to serve 10 million in the next 5 years. And if anybody listening wants to volunteer to help us do it, come on out and we'll grow Phoenix even more.
Awesome.